Let's start with a truth that's uncomfortable, yet liberating. No one cares about your problems. That sounds harsh, doesn't it? But it's not meant to break you, it's meant to free you. Because the moment you realize this truth, you stop waiting for others to fix what's broken in your life. You stop outsourcing your motivation, your confidence, your progress to people who are busy fighting their own battles. Everyone has problems. Everyone has something that keeps them awake at night. The difference between those who move forward and those who stay stuck is simple. The first group owns their problems. The second group announces them. When you take responsibility, your energy shifts. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "What can I learn from this?" That's where growth begins, not in comfort, not in sympathy, but in accountability. People don't follow those who have it easy. They follow those who have been through the storm and came out stronger, those who turn their pain into perspective. So, if you want others to care, don't share your problems, share your progress. The truth is, people care when your story teaches them something, when your struggle inspires them, when your resilience creates value. That's how connection happens, not through pity, but through purpose. So, stop waiting for someone to understand your pain, channel it, build something with it. Prove to yourself that you are stronger than your circumstances, because once you do, people will start to care not about your problems, but about how you face them. Every individual faces problems, some visible, others deeply internal. Yet, what separates those who thrive from those who stagnate is not the size of the problem, but the perspective with which they approach it. The phrase, "no one cares about your problems," can sound brutally indifferent, but when examined deeply, it holds the seed of transformation. It challenges the mindset of dependency and redirects focus towards self-awareness and personal accountability. A shift in perspective does not mean ignoring pain or pretending that challenges don't exist. It means choosing to see adversity not as a dead end but as a direction. When we encounter difficulties, our instinctive reaction is often emotional. We want to be understood, validated, or comforted. This reaction is human. It stems from our need for connection and empathy. However, over-reliance on external validation can trap us in a cycle of helplessness. We begin to believe that acknowledgement equals resolution, that once others recognize our struggle, the problem somehow diminishes. The truth is that while empathy provides comfort, it does not create change. Change begins internally when the individual reinterprets the situation from "why me" to "what can I do with this?" Perspective shift begins with reframing. Every problem carries two realities, the external event and the internal meaning we assign to it. Two people can experience the same obstacle. One views it as a wall, the other as a challenge to climb. The difference is perception. By learning to reframe experiences, we alter the emotional weight they carry. For instance, failure can be seen either as proof of inadequacy or as feedback that refines direction. This mental discipline does not happen instantly. It is cultivated through conscious self-dialogue and reflection. A powerful way to practice this shift is through neutral observation. Instead of labeling problems as good or bad, we can observe them as information. Information gives us data about what works, what doesn't, and where we need to adjust. This detachment helps prevent emotional flooding and promotes clarity. Problems, when viewed as data points, lose their power to paralyze. They become inputs for growth rather than reasons for despair. Perspective shift extends beyond individual resilience. It reshapes how we engage with others. When we adopt the belief that no one owes us understanding, we begin to communicate differently. We stop approaching conversations with expectations of sympathy and start engaging with curiosity and openness. This attitude attracts respect because it demonstrates emotional maturity. People respond more positively to those who take ownership rather than those who constantly seek consolation. Educational psychology supports this mindset. Studies in cognitive, behavioral theory emphasize that perception influences emotional and behavioral outcomes more than the situation itself. When individuals reinterpret problems as challenges, their stress responses decrease, problem-solving skills increase, and motivation improves. In simple terms, your brain performs better when it believes the challenge is meaningful rather than unfair. Perspective is not just a mindset, it is a biological advantage. Another key element of this shift is learning to separate identity from circumstance. People often fuse the two. They say, "I am a failure," instead of "I failed." The first statement defines the self, the second describes an event. This small linguistic difference shapes long-term self-perception. A perspective-oriented person learns to detach the self from the situation, understanding that identity is constant while circumstances fluctuate. Such awareness builds resilience and self-trust. It is also essential to recognize that shifting perspective does not mean suppressing emotion. Ignoring pain or frustration only deepens it. Instead, the shift involves processing emotion without becoming it. Acknowledging the difficulty, expressing it, and then transitioning into reflection are crucial steps. Emotion signals importance, reflection assigns meaning. Both are necessary for balanced growth. In leadership and education, perspective shift is the foundation of effective problem solving. When leaders focus on what can be done rather than who is to blame, they model constructive behavior for others. Similarly, in personal growth, shifting perspective fosters autonomy, the ability to act based on intention rather than reaction. People who master this art are less influenced by external chaos and more guided by internal clarity. Ultimately, the statement "no one cares about your problems" becomes less about rejection and more about responsibility. It teaches that waiting for others to fix our situation delays progress. When we stop expecting others to care, we begin to care more deeply ourselves. We start asking better questions, making better decisions, and developing the confidence to face uncertainty. The freedom lies in knowing that while others may not carry our burdens, we have the capacity to transform them into lessons. Through perspective shift, problems cease to be defining events. They become refining experiences. Each difficulty turns into an opportunity to learn patience, creativity, and adaptability. The moment we view life through this lens, we stop being victims of circumstance and start being authors of growth. Every meaningful transformation begins with ownership. Ownership means taking complete responsibility for where you are, what you feel, and how you respond to life's challenges. It is not about blaming yourself for everything that goes wrong, but about recognizing your power to influence outcomes. Many people confuse responsibility with fault. They are not the same. Fault is about the past, who caused the problem. Responsibility is about the present, what you choose to do now. The moment an individual accepts responsibility, they reclaim control over their circumstances. In every sphere of life, personal, academic, or professional, there will always be situations that seem unfair. It is easy to point fingers, to justify inaction by saying others failed to help, or the environment was unfavorable. However, that mindset gives away your agency. When you assign control to external forces, you unconsciously surrender your ability to act. Ownership shifts that narrative. It teaches that while you may not control every event, you always control your response to it. That response determines growth. Taking ownership requires a mindset of self-awareness. Self-awareness involves observing your reactions without judgment and asking, "What part of this situation can I influence?" It begins with small actions, showing up on time, keeping promises, admitting mistakes, and following through on commitments. These behaviors build integrity, which in turn strengthens self-respect. People who consistently take responsibility develop a sense of inner stability that is not shaken by external criticism or praise. They become reliable both to themselves and to others. A major obstacle to ownership is the comfort of excuses. Excuses protect the ego from discomfort, but imprison the individual in stagnation. They provide temporary relief by transferring blame outward, but long-term they erode self-trust. When people habitually justify their inaction, they begin to doubt their own capacity to change. Breaking this pattern demands humility, the willingness to admit, I could have done better. That single admission opens the door to improvement. Without humility, ownership cannot exist because the mind remains defensive instead of reflective. In the context of problem solving, ownership transforms how individuals approach challenges. Instead of asking, who is responsible for this mess, they ask, what can I do to make this better? This question redirects focus from complaint to contribution. It fosters initiative, creativity, and accountability. In organizations, teams built on this mindset function with higher efficiency because members see themselves as active participants, not passive employees. The same principle applies to personal growth. Progress happens when you stop waiting for ideal conditions and start working with what you have. Ownership also builds credibility. People trust those who take responsibility more than those who deflect blame. When you own your mistakes, you demonstrate integrity. When you fix them, you demonstrate competence. Both are essential to leadership. The act of saying, this was my oversight, and here's how I'll correct it, earns more respect than any justification ever could. Responsibility is not about perfection, it's about honesty and consistency. Psychologically, ownership strengthens resilience. When you internalize the idea that your actions matter, setbacks lose their power to define you. You see obstacles as tests of adaptability rather than signals of defeat. This mindset aligns with principles of locus of control in psychology, the belief that individuals with an internal locus, those who perceive control within themselves, exhibit higher motivation, persistence, and well-being compared to those with an external locus, those who attribute control to fate or others. Responsibility literally rewires the brain to focus on solutions instead of limitations. Taking ownership also transforms relationships. When both parties in a relationship, be it professional, educational, or personal, take responsibility for their communication and behavior, conflict becomes manageable. The dialogue shifts from accusation to collaboration. Instead of saying, you made me feel this way, ownership reframes it as, I felt this way when this happened, and here's how I can address it. This subtle linguistic change turns confrontation into cooperation. It demonstrates emotional intelligence, another skill born from responsibility. In the learning environment, responsibility is the difference between passive learning and active mastery. A student who blames the teacher for a low grade surrenders control. A student who asks, what can I do differently next time, reclaims it. The same applies to professionals. The most successful individuals are not those who never fail, but those who refuse to stay in denial about their role in failure. Ownership converts errors into education. It makes every mistake a resource. There is also a direct link between responsibility and freedom. At first, responsibility feels heavy because it demands effort, discipline, and accountability. But over time, it liberates you. When you stop depending on others for motivation or success, you become self-sufficient. You realize that you do not need perfect circumstances to take action. You only need commitment. This is the paradox of responsibility. It looks like a burden but acts as liberation. Ultimately, ownership shifts the internal dialogue. Instead of saying, someone should fix this, the responsible individual says, I will start with what I can fix. That single thought transforms not only the individual, but the environment around them. Responsibility creates momentum. It builds cultures of trust, teams of integrity, and individuals of character. When you accept full ownership, you stop chasing sympathy and start generating results. You stop waiting for others to care and begin to care enough yourself to create change. Every person faces struggle, yet not every person chooses to transform. that struggle into something meaningful. The difference lies in whether one focuses on being a victim of their problems or a creator of value through them. Value creation means transforming pain, mistakes, or challenges into lessons, insights, and contributions that benefit others. Victimhood, on the other hand, is the mindset of repeatedly emphasizing one's misfortune in the hope of gaining sympathy or validation. The world naturally gravitates toward those who add value, not those who continuously dwell on problems. This is not because people are heartless, but because energy follows contribution. People are inspired by what helps them grow, not by what drains them. When individuals remain in a victim mindset, they use their story as a shield rather than a tool. They focus on how unfair life has been, how others have wronged them, or how opportunities have been withheld. While these experiences may be real, the fixation on them prevents movement forward. Victimhood feels safe because it removes responsibility. It allows a person to say, "It's not my fault." But it also removes power. The price of victimhood is agency. When people choose to define themselves by what happened to them rather than by what they do next, they surrender the ability to create change. Value creation is the opposite. It begins with the same problems but takes a different path. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" the value-oriented individual asks, "How can this experience serve someone else?" This question transforms suffering into service. It turns personal pain into a platform for connection. Every inventor, teacher, leader, or artist who has impacted society has done so by channeling difficulty into discovery. They did not avoid hardship, they repurposed it. This shift from self-pity to contribution changes how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. In education and leadership, the contrast between victimhood and value creation is visible. Students who dwell on unfair grading or difficult lessons often disengage, while those who treat challenges as opportunities to improve their understanding end up mastering the material. Similarly, employees who constantly complain about workplace conditions rarely progress, while those who focus on creating better systems, ideas, or attitudes become indispensable. People who create value naturally attract respect, opportunities, and trust because they bring solutions instead of problems. Psychologically, victimhood fulfills short-term emotional needs but erodes long-term confidence. When someone gains attention through complaint, they receive temporary validation, which reinforces the behavior. Over time, this cycle weakens resilience and creativity. The brain becomes conditioned to seek external sympathy instead of internal strength. Value creation reverses that conditioning. When individuals focus on contribution, their self-esteem no longer depends on others' reactions. It grows from their sense of usefulness and progress. The satisfaction of helping, building, or improving something becomes more fulfilling than receiving pity. Value creation also shifts communication patterns. Victimhood-driven communication often revolves around self-focus. "No one helps me. I'm always struggling. People don't understand." These statements repel rather than attract because they give others no role except to console. Value-based communication, however, centers around curiosity and collaboration. "Here's what I've learned, this might help you too," or "let's solve this together." These statements open space for connection. They invite others into a shared purpose rather than a shared complaint. A critical aspect of value creation is skill development. The more capable you become, the more valuable your perspective becomes. Instead of repeating problems, value creators look for ways to improve their competence. Learning a new skill, refining a process, or developing emotional intelligence. When you invest in growth, you transform your problems into practical knowledge that can help others avoid the same mistakes. This is how personal adversity evolves into professional advantage. People respect those who can extract insight from hardship because it shows emotional maturity and vision. Socially, the shift from victimhood to value creation changes the way people respond to you. Sympathy may draw attention, but contribution builds loyalty. The world remembers those who make a difference, not those who constantly seek comfort. This is why leaders who share their past struggles as lessons rather than laments inspire others. They show that pain can be purposeful, that adversity can produce wisdom. When your story teaches others how to persevere, people start to care, not out of pity, but out of admiration. Value creation also fosters gratitude. When you focus on what you can give instead of what you have lost, your perspective widens. You begin to notice opportunities instead of obstacles. Gratitude fuels creativity because it directs attention toward what is available rather than what is missing. Victimhood narrows vision to what went wrong. Value creation expands vision to what can still go right. This mental expansion leads to innovation, resilience, and long-term fulfillment. From a behavioral standpoint, victimhood is reactive while value creation is proactive. A reactive mindset waits for change. A proactive mindset initiates it. People who create value do not wait for perfect conditions. They act, adapt, and learn. This forward movement builds momentum. Each small contribution strengthens identity and confidence, creating a cycle of growth that replaces the stagnation of complaint. In every field, education, business, or personal development, the principle remains the same. People remember the difference you make, not the problems you face. Your struggles matter, but only if they lead to insight, strength, and action. When you focus on what you can give, your problems no longer define you, they refine you. Value creation does not deny hardship. It transforms it into purpose, turning what once held you back into something that moves others forward. Every problem a person faces carries within it the potential seed of purpose. The transformation from problem to purpose is not a single event but a gradual process of reinterpretation. Problems by nature demand attention. They interrupt comfort, challenge certainty, and expose limitation. Purpose, by contrast, directs attention. It provides focus, energy, and meaning. The journey between these 2 points is one of awareness, resilience, and intention. It is about learning to translate pain into direction, failure into instruction, and struggle into significance. When individuals encounter difficulties, their first instinct is often resistance. They view problems as intrusions rather than invitations. This reaction is natural. The human mind is wired to seek safety and avoid discomfort. However, the paradox of growth is that purpose is often hidden behind the very experiences we try to escape. Adversity reveals values. It shows what truly matters, what hurts most, and what is worth fighting for. A person who loses a job might discover a passion for entrepreneurship. Someone who experiences rejection might uncover the importance of self-worth. Problems, when examined deeply, point toward unmet potential. The first step in turning problems into purpose is reflection. Reflection transforms chaos into clarity. It involves asking deliberate questions. What is this situation trying to teach me? What patterns keep repeating in my life? What value or principle feels violated here? These questions shift focus from why me to what now. Reflection gives problems structure. It organizes emotion into understanding. Without reflection, pain remains noise. With reflection, it becomes data for growth. Another essential element is acceptance. Acceptance is not the same as surrender. It means acknowledging reality without resentment. Many people delay transformation because they spend excessive energy wishing circumstances were different. Purpose cannot emerge in denial. It requires truth. When a person finally says, "This is what happened, and this is where I am," they reclaim their power to act. Acceptance anchors you in the present, where change is possible. Only from this grounded awareness can direction appear. Transformation also involves reframing perspective. A problem viewed as punishment paralyzes action, but a problem viewed as preparation motivates it. Reframing turns every obstacle into an exercise. It teaches the mind to interpret struggle as training for something larger. The athlete views pain as progress. The scholar sees confusion as learning. The leader treats setbacks as refinement. Reframing does not erase difficulty, it redefines its purpose. Each hardship becomes evidence that growth is happening. Purpose itself is born when personal insight becomes collective impact. The moment you take what you learned from pain and use it to help others, the problem stops being a burden and becomes a bridge. Many of the world's most meaningful initiatives, nonprofits, innovations, artistic movements, were founded by people who suffered deeply but refused to let that suffering end with them. They converted their private battles into public contributions. The addict who recovers may become a counselor, the survivor of loss may become a mentor, the student who once struggled may become a teacher. In this sense, purpose is recycled pain, pain that has been processed, understood, and shared with intention. Neurologically, this shift changes how the brain perceives stress. Studies on meaning, centered coping show that individuals who attach purpose to adversity experience lower anxiety and faster recovery. Purpose regulates emotion by giving struggle a storyline. When you believe that hardship serves a larger mission, your brain interprets it as challenge rather than threat. This biological reorientation enhances resilience and perseverance. The body follows the mind's interpretation. When the mind sees purpose, endurance increases naturally. Culturally, the transition from problem to purpose influences leadership and influence. People are drawn to those who can articulate how pain shaped their vision. Leaders who speak from experience create trust because their words are anchored in authenticity. They do not preach ideals, they demonstrate transformation. When others see that your problems refined rather than destroyed you, they perceive strength, not struggle. This is why stories of overcoming adversity resonate universally. They mirror the human potential to rise. Turning problems into purpose also requires gratitude. Gratitude reframes the emotional tone of experience. Instead of focusing on what was lost, gratitude identifies what was gained: wisdom, patience, perspective. It softens bitterness and strengthens compassion. People who practice gratitude during hardship develop empathy, making them more capable of serving others meaningfully. Purpose built on gratitude carries a different energy. It uplifts rather than seeks recognition. Action is the final step in this process. Reflection, acceptance, and gratitude prepare the foundation, but action gives purpose expression. Taking consistent steps, whether by sharing a lesson, starting a project, or mentoring someone, transforms inner insight into external influence. The act of using one's experience to benefit others reinforces identity and reinforces resilience. Every purposeful action rewires the brain to associate difficulty with contribution rather than despair. Education and psychology both emphasize experiential learning, understanding that knowledge becomes wisdom only when applied. Similarly, personal growth becomes purpose when it extends beyond the self. The transformation of problems into purpose completes itself only through contribution. It is not enough to survive pain. The deeper fulfillment comes from ensuring that the pain serves a larger good. This cycle turns the inevitable difficulties of life into engines of development. Ultimately, the movement from problems to purpose is the evolution from reaction to intention. Problems force awareness, purpose directs it. Each obstacle faced with reflection, acceptance, gratitude, and action becomes a stepping stone toward meaning. Through this process, individuals learn that pain does not disqualify them from purpose, it qualifies them for it. Problems do not end one's journey. They redefine it by revealing what one was meant to build, teach, or become.